Hi, this is Archana Sarit, author of Tales from the History of Mathematics. Mathematics kindles extreme passions. Either you love the subject or you hate it. I belong to the former category. I love mathematics, but I had never known about the story of mathematics, or it was only later that I got fascinated with the subject of the evolution of mathematics. With every step in the rise of human civilization, there has been an increase in our understanding of mathematics. And every new discovery in mathematics has shaped our entire civilization. Man went from counting numbers on his fingers to using beads and knots, and then came the writing down of numbers. And even there was a lot of differences. There was the Greek number system, the Roman number system, and then there was the Hindu decimal system, which came from India. It has been fascinating to learn about how one system, the Hindu decimal system, spread on all through the world and how it was considered far superior to the other systems. It's not just the Hindu decimal system or zero that were India's contribution to mathematics. India has made huge strides in understanding of mathematics and in contribution to the evolution of mathematics. All this fascinated me, and that's what resulted in my writing this little book, Tales from the History of Mathematics. The book is suitable for anyone right from 8 years to 88 years. I strongly recommend the book for children. Even those who have a fear for mathematics or who hate mathematics will definitely grow to love the subject when they realize that every single one of us is actually already born as a mathematician. Thank you, PILF and Manjari Prabhu, for having me here today. Do pick up a copy of the book on Amazon and enjoy it. Bye.
Good evening and welcome back to Studio 2. For this session, from your creation to mine, translating thoughts, our renowned panelists are Bhavna Somaya. Bhavna Somaya has been a film critic for almost 40 years and has contributed columns to various publications like The Hindu, BBC, and many more. Somaya was conferred with Padma Shri in 2017. She is the entertainment editor at 92.7 Big FM radio channel, and Write Letters to Mother is her 17th book. Anna Filomena Amaral, novelist, historian, and translator, is a Portuguese awarded writer. She's an experienced interpreter and translator in several European languages, particularly German. She's already published 6 novels in Portugal, and 2 of them are published in USA. She's published 12 books in all. Nandini Vijaya Raghavan is a corporate finance professional with extensive experience in researching Pacific corporates. Nandini's writings, columns, case studies, and books focus on the Asian business landscape and translations of Tamil books of literature into English. The Singapore Blue Chips is her maiden corporate biography. Prashasti Rastogi will be moderating this session. With over 13 years of experience in publishing, higher education, technology, culture, and media, Prashasti has worked at the cross section of the creative sector in an endeavor to create networks that will build the future of content. Currently, she is the head of strategy, partnerships, and communications at Wiley in India. She's worked closely with government departments and agencies, corporates, and academic institutions. We now ask Ms. Rastogi to take this session forward.
Thank you very much, Pranaya. So welcome everybody. It is actually a power-packed women's panel today that I realize. We have a very interesting mix of culture and heritage. Here, Nandini between Tamil Nadu and Singapore, and then we have Anna from Portugal, who also is a fellow German speaker. Bhavna Somaya joining in, and speaker of Gujarati and translator of texts from Gujarati to English, whom we have for many years, known as the much revered film historian, film critic, and an author of many interesting books on Indian tradition and culture, on Krishna, on Garbha Sanskar, apart from the much revered authorized biography of Hema Malini, I remember. Great. So, welcome, ladies. Welcome to the panel. It's a very interesting topic that we've been given, considering in the day and age that we live today, translation, transcreation, co-creation is something that parallelly coexist. And Bhavna, are you able to hear us? I think there's some challenges with the internet on Bhavna's end. Are you able to hear us?
I can hear you. For some reason, the internet is misbehaving itself today, and I am about to speak, and it destroys it for me. So I think you were introducing me. Thank you very much for whatever you said.
Great. So before I start the session, something that comes to my mind, and I remember I used to scribble it on my notebooks all my school years, was Ano Bhadra Kratvo Yantu Vishwataha. This is a Vedic Sanskrit mantra, which means let noble thoughts come to us from every side. And this seems to be the shortest description for translation in the contemporary sense of the word. Translation is all around us and yet seldom noticed. News, views, and many hues. Translation covers everything from holy books to pandemic warnings and poetry to peace treaties. Over centuries, translation has fueled culture, it has fueled trade, it has fueled spread of religion, prevented wars, and spurred the internet economy as we know today at Google, Facebook, and many others. Goethe had said that without language diversity, we would be intellectually impoverished, and with it, we are enriched. I think without translators to reinterpret and retell the other, we would really remain caged in our limited theories, in our limited worldview. It's actually a pretty fascinating story of translation. It spans across civilizations, across mediums, and theories. When I say mediums, it also refers to the tablets. Rosetta Stone that exists in the British Museum of History is the oldest known non-religious text translation dating to 2nd century BC. And when we talk about religious scriptures, it's said that the first significant translation in the Western world was of the Hebrew Bible in the 3rd century. Jewish people who had forgotten Hebrew, as we do experience that there has been loss of script and loss of languages, especially in India, considering we have had oral traditions. So 70 translators at that time were commissioned to complete the project. Legend has it that the translators were sent to different rooms, but they all miraculously came out with the exact same translation of the Bible. And this translation is called the Septuagint, referring to the 70 translators involved in the project. Back in India, there have been lots of ancient translations. Especially recognized are the ones that were carried out by the Buddhist monks into Chinese. And translations in India in the medieval period have actually shaped the multilinguistic nature of people that we are today. Nandini, I remember you had mentioned that India is a young nation but an ancient civilization, because the two forms of languages, the Dravidian which you represent, amalgamated. And most of us speak at least two languages by the nature of the background, the historical background that we have. It also led to the creation of new dialects, languages, due to the interaction of the local and the language of the colonizers or maybe the trade allies who came to India. And with the growth of machine translation, business translation, academic, non-fiction translation, the art and science of translation has come a very, very long way. In 2020, I'm told the translation industry stands at $45 billion and it's growing at the rate of 19% CAGR. So this is, my friends, a very, very significant time for translation in the literal and the business world. With this context, I'd like to come to you all and know a little bit about what brought you into this world of translations. Share a piece of your journey with us. And because in India we say Atiti Devo Bhava, which is the guest is the god, I would first give the mic to Anna and then come to Bhavna and Nandini.
Yes, so I really started my translation way with German because I studied German with 17 years old. And when I finished the Goethe Institute, I started translating books because in that time, more than 30 years ago, the German language was very, very sort of weird in Portugal. So it was, there were not so many people talking and reading the German language. So it was for me a great opportunity. And then with German came English, but I really work more with German. And now I don't work with any one of them because my time, I dedicate all my time to my books, writing, and really I it's not so much time for the translation. But I would like to share with you some thoughts about translation because you told me that if I could give you some ideas about what was the translation in Europe, because there are several very crucial moments in Europe about translation. For instance, in Middle Age times, the translation and translators were crucial for the modern language and for the modern nations that become to appear in that time. So for 2000 years or more, translators played a crucial role in society and the history of all countries in Europe. And there are several moments, for instance, in Middle Age, we cannot forget the School of Toledo in Spain. Of course, these schools were all ecclesiastic schools, so from the church, and they translated a great number of works in Arabic and Greek into Latin, and we are these were their heritage to us, and this way. Also, the Arabs, they translated from the 7th century, they translated a lot of works in Arab from Greek. And it was, this is the sediment of our Western culture. And it's very important not to forget the importance of these translators. When I say translation, I don't know if it's correct to speak about translation in these centuries because the dictionaries and the thesaurus that they had, they were not reliable. So I think that we can speak more about interpretation or adaptation of these texts to Latin. And of course, the church were the main place where all these works were done, the monasteries, the monastery schools. And also connected with the church, we have the 16th century that is also very, very important in this process because in this, we have of course, the printing process that started in 15th century with oh, now I'm forgetting the inventor of the printing, the Gutenberg.
Gutenberg.
Gutenberg. Gutenberg. And in that time, in the 16th century, it was very, very important for us in Western time, the Luther reform, because they started to translate the Bible. And as you all know, that the Bible is the most translated book in all times. And they started to translate the Bible into their own languages. And this is very, very important because it explains the development of the Central European countries in opposition of the Southern European countries. So in the 16th century, in these countries, people learned to read and to write with the Bible. With the Bible in the 16th century. So I have to remember that in the 19th century, still in Portugal, we have a very, very high illiteracy in the 20th century, because, for instance, we started to celebrate the masses in Portuguese only in 1965. So people were in the mass, but they didn't understand nothing because they were celebrated in Latin. So this explains a lot of our delay in relation to these countries. And when I speak about delays, cultural and educational delay of the southern countries. And then I must speak about the 19th century because it was also very, very, very important for us women. And this is a women panel. So the women, as you know, in the 19th century, they started their fight, at least in Western countries, for equal gender rights. And in 19th century, there were a lot of women translators that were not allowed to sign their works with their own name because with a female name. So they had to have a pseudonym, a male name, to sign their works. And this is also a crucial moment for translation. And let me say also that in spite now in 20th century and in the 21st century, that with all this technology, with all this software, with all this improvement in the way we translate the texts, I think the translators became a bit invisible. The translators are somehow underappreciated and under-evaluated. And I think that something should be done. For instance, I always see books, especially literary books, translated from other languages where the name of translator is not there. So is the name of the writer, the author, but the translator, the name of the translator is not there. This is an outrage. So, and I quiet myself now so that you can also share with us your thoughts.
Anna, you're absolutely right. The underrepresentation of translators, the credit and recognition are obviously big issues. I think when we move the discussion to the business of translation and the whole acceptance of readership and the publishing challenges we have, I think we'll revisit this. Especially what has developed in the politics of translation these days is there is a certain section of authors who would not accept male translators if they have a say of translation on this translation. So they will definitely look out for a woman translator to translate their body of work. This is the most recent development that has come in the space, and it is significantly important in that direction. But before we touch those areas, Bhavna, we have Bhavna here with us, who's had a very interesting publishing journey this year. You set upon a journey of translating a very important person's very personal writings this year. I'm talking about the book PM Modi's Letters to the Mother, which came out this summer from HarperCollins, and you've translated it from Gujarati into English. A language has some very untranslatable phrases, idioms, and especially when it's something as soft as a communication between mother and son. It must have been filled with many nuances. Tell us about the book and your journey. Are we able to have Bhavna talk? The screen is frozen. I think we have challenges at Bhavna's end in terms of the internet. I'll come back to her when the connection resumes. Nandini, I'll come to you with the. Oh, we have Bhavna joining in from another connection now.
Yeah,
Bhavna,
so
you
I
could
kept
hear
both
me?
the things on. I can hear
Okay.
you, Prashasti. Want me to speak?
Yes, please go ahead.
You want me to? Yeah. So what I've done is
Yes,
I've
yes.
switched on my phone, I've put the thing on, and wherever it works, I'm going to just speak. And if you lose me, you
Okay.
lose me. So,
Okay.
just to first add to what Anna was saying, I think translating is more difficult than original writing. And for me, who is an original writer, I'm often asked that what is more difficult, and I always say translating is more difficult because I'm responsible for my subject, I'm responsible for myself, and I don't want to lose either. So it is a balance of the two, which makes my responsibility dual, which makes my suffering dual. In 2008, I was asked to translate Lord Krishna's book from Gujarati into English. And because I'm a devotee of Lord Krishna, I said yes emotionally. And then when I started translating, I realized it was very difficult. And I just asked him to help me to be able to do it. And I think it is one of my best books. Then there is a friend of mine who asked me last year that what are you translating now? And I said, I'm not translating anything because I'm too exhausted after that translation. And he said, no, you have to translate. Why don't you think about Prime Minister's book and do it? So he would ring me up every day and say, how are you doing it? And I would say, no, it's an immense responsibility. I don't want to get into that space. But just to get him off the back, I said that let me at least read it. And then I read this book of his, which is Letters to Mother. Actually, in the Gujarati, it is called Sakshi Bhav. And he is writing a diary. This diary is written in 1986, and he is expressing himself not to his biological mother but to Mother Goddess, the Durga Mata, Amba Mata. And he is talking about the social issues, political issues, personal issues, personal anguish, um, his whatever is his churning emotion. So when I started translating, see, you have to understand the reason I was hesitant to translate is because I have not studied Gujarati. It is my mother tongue, but I have not studied it. But my parents were very keen that we should learn the mother tongue. So whatever I've learned is from my parents, because my father believed that there has to be a payoff to the language. So anyway, I quietly started translating the book. Like a journalist, I first finished the first draft because I wanted to keep a deadline. And then I worked on the second, third, and finally I was satisfied. But I was still worried because, after all, it was the Prime Minister's book. And I did not want to lose his emotion quotient, which is the strongest part of the book. And then, call it coincidence, I was on a flight one day and I met Meghna Gulzar, who is a daughter of Gulzar Saab. And I said, your father has translated so many books. How close does one have to do it, and how much liberties can you take? So she said, let me she had read a beautiful line and she quoted that to me, that if she's beautiful, she's not faithful. And if she's faithful, she's not beautiful. So to make your writing, I feel what we translate, what we call translation, is transcreation. After all, Mr. Modi is a man, I am a woman. I'm feeling his emotion quotient, but I'm feeling it in my way. I'm writing it like a woman, though it is a man's emotion. So it is a transcreation, and it is beautiful, and it is faithful, and I've just given it my best shot.
Thanks, Bhavna. I haven't read it so far, but I'm totally looking forward to it. And in fact, that's the beauty that translation brings in. I mean, the diversity of literature that it brings in. I mean, it's like something like a window to the world. I remember I started learning German, and when I started learning German, it was more of a professional decision than a personal decision. But then, after a couple of semesters into the program, when I started to pick up German literature in its original, that completely changed my perspective and opened up the complete window to the world. And I have not got published translations, but I've translated many works over the period of time. And it was just a catharsis, a completely different emotion that you experience when you try to put that into the context that we in India are living through. From that perspective, Nandini, I'd like to come to you. A career in banking, a career in corporate finance, and a love for uh, classic Tamil literature. So, tell us a little bit about your journey there.
Okay. Well, I'm a reader who accidentally forayed into translation. It happened around 10 years ago. You know, bunch of us loved reading, and we were having this heated discussion about specific books and the impact those books had on our lives and on society at large, etc. And my son was uncharacteristically silent during that very heated discussion. And after everyone returned home, the gathering was at our house. He turned around and said, Nandama, you spoke of English books, Hindi books, French books, but nothing about Tamil books. And that set me thinking, because though I'm a Tamilian, raised in Chennai, my second and third languages in school were Hindi and French. So the Tamil I learned was what my parents taught me, and through the various novels, my grandmother, whom we used to call Veda Pani, she was a violinist, she was a great musician, and she had this knack of reading novels in a way that would unfold in front of you like a movie. So the characters came alive, when she read. And that she was a musician also helped, because when poetry came, she used to sing. So it was a movie unfolding in front of you. And so when he said that, the first book I picked up was Kalki Krishnamurti's magnum opus called Shivakami in Sabadam, which means Shivakami's Oath. And my grandmother had read it to me in my early teens, but as I was reading the book just possessed me. And I couldn't put it down. And in fact, by the time it is a 4-volume book, and by the time I reached the climax, I'm not a sentimental person by nature, but I was weeping unconsolably. And that happened, and without any agenda, I started translating that novel. And a couple of friends who read the manuscript or what was there on my laptop said, Nandini, put it in a blog. I put it in a blog, and one of the readers, who's now a friend, she read it and she said, Nandini, this needs to be published, and then introduced me to the publisher. So it was entirely accidental, but then I realized that doing this is one way, my humble way of paying tribute to the world's only classical language that is being spoken in the current times. Latin is used in church services, Sanskrit is used in prayers, But Tamil is the only classical language of vintage. Historians are divided whether it's as old as Sanskrit or predates Sanskrit, we don't know. But it is the only language which is being spoken in India, in Sri Lanka, in Malaysia, in Singapore. It's spoken and increasingly in Canada, in the UK. And what way can I pay tribute to that language? But by doing translations and getting these stories to a wider world. But having done that translation, Shivakami and Narasimha Varma Pallavar, the two protagonists of the novel, haunted me. I couldn't get over the book. And then I said, okay, let me translate something lighter, which was a comedy novella called Washington Il Tirumana, which means The Wedding at Washington. So I did feel a lot better after translating that book. But guess what? No publisher was willing to touch it. They said, oh, it's a niche book. It focuses on Tamil Brahmins. Not many people will understand it. So I'm very thankful to Suhail Mathur of Bookbakers and PILF's title sponsors, Vishwakarma Publications, who after more than 5 years picked up the book, and it will be published in 2021. It would have been published in 2020, but for COVID, so it will be out in 2021.
Well, quite a journey there. Inspiration came at home, and then something in your inner voice spoke to you.
That's
Nandini.
right.
And congratulations and all the best for your upcoming book. I would like to pick up a point that Bhavna was talking about. Bhavna, you mentioned when during the translation for Letters to Mother, you went through a different emotional journey because you're reading and interpreting what the Prime Minister was expressing in his diary, but you were interpreting it as a woman, as a person who's completely separate from the whole context of that original work. So that brings me to the whole idea that we've been reiterating during our initial conversations about transcreation. You know, in Hindi, we have bhashantar, we have rupantar. So the bhashantar is literally transferring from one language to the other. But rupantar is what, Anna, you mentioned as adaptation, a change of form. So how do you, as a translator, see that? Because, you know, the lucidity, the fluidity of a translation is completely, it gives you the illusion of transparency when you read a text departed from the original in a completely different language. So Bhavna, tell us a little bit about that part that you had slightly mentioned initially. I think I can come to Anna and throw the same question at you about transcreation and adaptation and co-creation. When Bhavna's connection resumes, we'll have her back.
Okay, it is very interesting what Nandini said right now, because yesterday when I was thinking about what I'm going to say today to you, and what we feel when we are translating or trying to translating or recreating a text, I felt myself as a kind of an actor. Because when you are translating, the translation is a dialogue between the first creator and the second creator. And you have to undress yourself. You have to feel your being with the ideology, with the psychology, with the history, with the background of the author. Because otherwise, and Nandini said something very, very amazing, because I thought in this word yesterday, possessed. Possessed is really the word that when you are possessed with this text, so you can start to translate it. But you have to wait for that moment. And this is very interesting because what I'm doing now is translating my one of my last novels in German, from Portuguese into German. And I'm experiencing a so amazing feeling that I don't know if the translation is going to be good or not, or translation or the recreation. But it's amazing because I'm coming back 30 years when I first learned German. And really, I almost cried when I read my text in German. Because of course, it's as you know, it's completely different, but it's so emotional because I mean these both characters, author and translator, and this is a very new experience for me. So I think that the dialogue between one and the other is really very important, and being possessed is crucial for that.
That's right. And there's always a slight discussion that always happens when people sit together, saying the work of the author is the work of the author. That is the mindset and the story. It's somebody else's. And you know, the name of our panel is also From Your Creation to Mine, Translating Thoughts. So, how difficult do you think, or how easy do you think it is to keep you as a person separate from the art? You know, your thoughts, your influence, your politics, your ideologies, when they are in complete contrast with the original creator or the story, or you're so removed from the context that you have to frantically research and read and, you know, immerse yourself in that whole drama that plays in that original creation. That must be quite a challenge, I think. Bhavna, you were nodding when I said so.
It's because when I was translating the Prime Minister's book, so where you agree, it is easy. Where it seems not coming from your experience, somebody else's experience, what he's going through, you pause and ponder. And then you shut the book for a night because you think that I'm not getting it. Or maybe what is he going through at that time for him to feel so intensely, because it's a very emotional book. Then I would try to research that 1986, what was happening to him, what was happening to politics. He was just an RSS worker, or maybe just a party worker at that time. If it is a story about a cinema person, because I'm a film critic, then I know it all. I know the history, I know the backstories, I know the nuances, I know even the characters who are not mentioned. So I'm familiar with his pattern. For example, I've done 3 books on Mr. Bachchan, but not with politics. But at the same time, I think that that was my asset, because I'm not a political journalist, because I don't mingle with the Delhi crowd, because I'm not writing those kind of stories. I am not worried about what my the Delhi colleagues think about my writing or how they judge me. I couldn't give a damn. For me, it is just a book I translated, and it's over. I move on to my next target. But you can't have an opinion on what is written. What is written is God. That is the author's work. You can beautify it. You can bring a little order if there is confusion, but you can't alter it. You can give it your personality, because that is, in any case, if you are a writer, there are 2 kinds of translators. One who is not an original writer. That person is only a translator. Then it is very easy. But when you are an original writer first and then a translator, you know, the writer in you cannot be dormant. It will not go to sleep. I whiplash it, but it will not go to sleep. It pops up again and again. I say, shut up, shut up. But it doesn't shut up. And I don't want it to ever shut up, because that's what makes me special. Praptashi, I would like to say that I'm here till as long as my internet does not misbehave. But when it misbehaves, I'm getting schizophrenic, trying to, I don't want to be selfish and opt out because other women are saying such interesting things. But the minute it starts misbehaving, I will shut it.
Understand.
We are all women. What happens is the intercom is buzzing, somebody else is making some ishara from there. You're trying to keep the demons around.
But that's the beauty of having an online literature festival. It happens to people, you get a little bit of insight into the people's real lives, what their context is. When you hold a pen or you start keying in your thoughts, this is the room you sit in and this is how your surroundings behave. So that's also an interesting point. But leading on from what Bhavna said, it'll be interesting to see also the space of translations that we are in. You all are beautiful and expressive writers, and the works have come out beautifully. I mean, especially the classics that you've translated. And sometimes there are news flashes that the translation reads better than the original. But somehow the whole context of translations has suffered many, many challenges. Pen World Voice had released a figure which really sent everybody to a shock, and even founded a publishing house on its name, 3% by Chatpost. There are only 3% of translations from other languages available in English. That makes a pittance of about 400 odd books a year. And India, we don't even have a registered figure, because though we have a huge tradition of multilingualism, we always found English as a channel of one to the other, and therefore it was always not so prominent. There have been in the recent decade a lot of activities in that domain. So why do you think that we are going through this whole defocus around translations through the world? Anna, I mean, you translate into German. The situation there is considerably better. About 30% to 40% books are from other languages. But when we speak of English, the figures are really dismal. So is there no readership? What do you think from a translator's perspective, as an insider's view, are the challenges with translations, publishing?
Yes, I think that the English language has now, and you are bilingual, so for you it's probably easier. But for us, Western countries, the supremacy of the English language is really killing us because we cannot escape it, and it's very, very hard. For instance, as an author, as a writer, the first thing I thought when I write my books is to try to publish them in English. Because if they are in English, almost everyone can read them. And this is, for a translator, a very important issue, because, and for instance, in Portugal, I think it's our cultural ministry understood that the importance of the writers and their works is connected with the number of translations they have in other languages. And this is, and they started already 10 years ago, they started a program where they give a grant for foreign publishers if they publish and translate the Portuguese writers. And this is very important because, for instance, I'm now remembering the market in the United States. Almost no one knows Portuguese writers. Almost no Portuguese writers are in the American markets. And why? Because we don't invest. And when we say we, our government, our official institutions don't invest enough in the translation of the Portuguese authors in the United States. For instance, now we have a kind of foundation, Luso-American foundation, that now are starting also a grant, a translation program with a grant for also publishers in the USA who want to publish Portuguese writers. So this is very, very important because at least in English. Because,
Right.
for instance, tomorrow in this panel, we are going to talk about several books. One of my book is the book I'm going to talk about is Chasing Walls. But why I'm going to talk about Chasing Walls? Because it's translated in English and you could have access to it through Amazon. So this is crucial. This is the core of all this literature, and maybe not only literature market that we really as country and countries must think about.
That's true. There's a whole ecosystem that's failing to support this very important journey that a book should make. There's so many challenges. Editors don't read foreign languages. There is a lack of fund to employ probably translators as suggestive editors.
Yes.
Translators are normally paid for passion and seldom for the work. The corporate consolidation is so hugely number driven that it's making so much harder to publish books that seldom sell as big numbers. I mean, I'm not talking about Gabriel Garcia Marquez, or I'm not talking about Günter Grass. Here, I'm not talking about one-off gems that we have had from Kannada, like Gachar Kochar or Perumal Murugan's One Part Woman. These are exceptionals, but these are very, very significant books that have come out to prove that literary hits are coming from non-English literature. And unfortunately, the indie presses cannot afford to, market the foreign titles they do publish, and therefore the bookstores don't stock them. So why don't we have a translation robust ecosystem? And Nandini, you were earlier mentioning that our narratives are seldom and very sporadically found in the global literary scene. So I think we need to address this imbalance somehow.
Is that to me? Okay. So yes, there are a whole bunch of misconceptions which go around. In fact, we've been told for time immemorial, India has never invaded another country. Now, what is India? India is a political union that occurred after the colonization by the British. Till then, we were never India. We were a collection of princely states united by some kind of common culture and a continuum of languages. So that's what we were. And guess what? We have invaded other countries. There was this Chola emperor called Rajendra Chola who went up to Kedah in Malaysia and conquered Kedah and came back. And that is how Hinduism spread. One of the ways Hinduism spread to Southeast Asia. And one of his titles is Kadaram Kondan, which means the one who conquered Kedah. So, and we have had, our skirmishes with Sri Lanka are not recent. Historically, the Pandyas and the Cholas and the kings of Sri Lanka have had trade links, they've had military skirmishes, there has been political intrigue, and all of this has not been captured by our Delhi-centric history books. So, so that is and the first war of Indian independence did not happen in 1857, it happened a year ago. And it was of a much longer period and of much greater intensity, but we don't get to read of it. So that being the case, translations are essential to introduce us to ourselves. And in the 21st century, I think Hankang's The Vegetarian, which was translated by Deborah Smith, was a very important milestone because that was the first translation, if I'm not mistaken, where the translator and the author shared the Booker Prize for the year 2016. So it was also very interesting that a British author translated a Korean text and catapulted that book to the global literary scene. So that was something very interesting. And in India, Ratna Books, a translation imprint of Ratna Sagar, they've carried out, they are doing this beautiful series of translations into English from languages across India. So you have Bengali, you have Marathi, you have Tamil. I mean, they've really ensured that, you know, the diversity of the Indian linguistic landscape is highlighted, and so are the narratives. And each of their books is a work of art. Now, what more needs to be done? The first significant steps have been taken in the 21st century. I think two more things need to be done. Just as you have Amazon, I think you need a country-specific e-marketplace which showcases everything about the country. So if it is India, it should be Indian literature, Indian translations, food, clothes, gems and jewelry, you know, the works. And why should it be country specific? Why can't we outsource it to Amazon? So in Tamil, there's a beautiful word called manvasane, which means the smell of the earth, the culture. Okay, so I think if each country were to put up a country-specific portal showcasing that and also making it a commercial enterprise, unfortunately, we cannot live with love and fresh air. We need the money coming in. So if each e-marketplace is made commercially viable, that is the third step which needs to be taken. And the fourth step, I really wish we had Bhavna online for this. Indians are very passionate about their films, and we understand politics through films. We understand literature through films, and music and dance through films. In films like Shankara Bharanam and Sagara Sangamam, I think in the 80s, kind of made people very passionate about classical music and Bharatanatyam. So, we understand, most of us understand a lot of things through films. So I think mainstream films based on translations are necessary to put the spotlight on translations and get people to read more translations to understand ourselves.
I think that's a very brilliant idea. I mean, in India, we have Sahitya Akademi, which has done significant work of bringing regional text into other languages. When in my stint with Frankfurt Book Fair, I used to witness this massive preparation for the guest of honor country. Every year, there was a country that was guest of honor, and hundreds of translations were commissioned into various languages of the guest of honor country. And therefore, you get to read a lot of different texts. So an e-portal, which is a combination of all the cultural institutions which promote translations, like the Goethe Institute for Germany, Alliance Française for the French translations, the Sahitya Academy in India. If a consortia can be formed, and therefore all the books in translation get together, I think that sounds like a fantastic idea and a very major step towards the discovery of translated books. Because I think this whole army of reviewers and book bloggers and book critics that we have, and I wish Bhavna had a better internet moment today, because film critics and film reviewers really make or break the film or make it travel farther. And with book reviewers, that's not the case so far. I mean, sometimes the reviews are not even read. So I think this whole battery could have come together and made this significant dent. And with that, I see our anchor Pranaya back on screen, which indicates that we are out of time. Is there one question that we can take, Pranaya, from the audience? Anything that you feel? That you see on the screen?
Ma'am, I would leave the choice to you.
Okay. Let me
ma'am.
just quickly scroll through if there are audience questions. Yeah, there's a comment by Rajamani Iyer, which I think I should mention because Anna talked about the books in Portugal. Indian government can take a leaf from from Portugal in grants for the writer if the person's book are translated in other languages. So yes, outward program is also required because we have a lot of inward programs, but an outward, a strong and sturdy outward program of taking Indian regional literature into other languages is what we significantly need. And on that note, thank you, Anna. Thank you, Nandini. It was pleasure talking to you. I'm sure we can talk for a couple of hours more. And we lost Bhavna, but thank you, Bhavna, for being there. And over to you, Pranaya.
Thank you so much for an inspiring session, ma'am. This was very enlightening. And with that, we come to the end of this session. Our next session, Stories from the Homeland, begins at 8:15, and we look forward to seeing all of you there. Thank you.